there has been a noticeable surge in new political parties being formed, especially as the country edges closer to the election season. This year alone, we've seen familiar political figures like former ANC MP Boy Mamabolo and former MK Party Secretary General Floyd Shivambu launching their own political parties, and those are Born to Win and the Afrika Mayibuye Movement, respectively. Some see the emergence of new political parties as a healthy sign of democratic engagement, while others argue that it dilutes the vote and raises questions about the intent and sustainability of such parties. According to the IEC, they have registered 34 new political parties after last year's national and provincial elections. This brings the total number of registered political parties to 472. So in the next few minutes, I'll be speaking to Sydney Baloyi, who is spokesperson for the newly formed Afrika Mayibuye Movement, Boy Mamabolo, the leader of Born to Win, as well as Masego Shiburi, the IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, to unpack all of that. But before we get into that conversation, we took to the streets and spoke to ordinary South Africans. Let's hear what you've had to say about the number of political parties registered in our political system.
I feel that it is the right thing in terms of competition, because if you are ruled by monopoly or one government, one party, they do whatever they feel that they do, even though sometimes it might seem wrong, but they do it. But if there's competition, they know that the voters will then have to move to another party, which means that they will lose their seat. Their seat percentage will no longer be the same as the previous one. Therefore, competition in terms of opening the party is the right thing.
The more there is, the more parties there are, the more choices we have. But I feel like, genuinely speaking, everybody's objective or everybody's goal is still the same.
Ayonto inhle leyo to our country as because abantu basebenzisa ipower yabo just to influence people. Uba babengahlala kule political party, umzekelo kuphuma abantu sesesibazi ba okay beyimember ye-EFF beyimember ye-ANC ahamba yozifomela yakhe party, kanti bebehlala kwi-party A1 then baske batshintshe ke ngoku i-leader if ever bayabona izinto azenze ngalendlela besithembe ngayo as a country. Umzekelo basipromise izinto then bathi basokufumana ivote basitsho bangazenze izinto bebesithembise zona.
Akukho right ama-politician asuka kuma-political party abafoma wabo, because akukho right. Number one, kuyasiconfuse okokuqala. Okunye futhi akunomehluko, akuno-change, sihlala sihlupheka worse than before. So for me, kuthi bavula ama-political party akukho right at all.
I think we should work as a collective whereby political parties by collective zibezi groups as small like US, because for me as umuntu omncinci xa kufuneka ndithathe i-decision obana mhlawumbi I have to vote, mna since ndimngaka andizazi mos i-history ye-politics by this thing, I'm going to take a decision based on into yobana ndithi laa mntu uzawusenzela ntoni, not knowing uba wenze ntoni le political party bekade kuyo. So I feel like no, it's a no.
All right, so we've set it up nicely. Let me turn to my panel who join me now for that conversation. We've also added political analyst Sethulejo Matebesi, who is now part of the conversation. But I think let's just get the full lay of the land. Let me start with you, Masego Shiburi. Is it par for the cause and something that you see in the ordinary course of doing things at the IEC, the registration of some 34 new political parties within the space that spans close on 12 to, say, 14 months? Is that usual, or are we seeing an acceleration?
Thanks to the first thing, let's say this. Political parties are an important platform for expression and representation in a democracy. Two, the Commission is a registrar of political parties, and only those parties that are registered with the Commission may contest elections. Indeed, we see the increased number of parties with each ensuing election. As you correctly state, since last year's elections, we've registered, it was 34 2 weeks ago. Today, we're close to 40 parties that have been registered since June last year. It is one could say it is a reflection of fractured politics, but it could also mean that there are new voices that think there are specific issues that require representation and being brought to the fore in the national body politic.
Yeah, in fact, let me stick with you and we'll get into the discussion with the other panelists in a moment. But just, I know that you're not politically analyzing and scrutinizing the suitability or otherwise, but you are in a vantage point that allows you to say something about the nature and diversity of interests that you see coming through. So are all these political parties that we're talking about seeking to enter state power at a national level, or is it mostly at regional and local level?
Of the 480 parties currently registered, just under 300 are registered at a national level. In other words, they can contest elections for all municipal councils, they can contest all provinces and regions, they could also contest for seats in the National Assembly. The balance, 190 or so, are parties that are registered either at the provincial level or in a district. And if you are registered at a district, you may only contest municipalities in that district. If you are registered at the metro level, you may only contest elections at that metro municipality level. So the preponderance of parties are those that are registered at the national level, and that registration entitles a party to contest for all seats in the country.
Boy Mamabolo, simply because yours is, in my calculation, one of the latest to come through, and Sydney Baloyi as well coming through with my Afrika Mayibuye. Let me start with you, Boy Mamabolo. What makes Born to Win a voice that is necessary in a landscape where, as Masiko Shiburi was describing, we have about 480 political parties? Why is yours a voice that must be added to that mix?
Look to last season, most of the political parties in the country now, they represent the elite. So we are taking a different posture now, in a sense that most of the people that we are mobilizing, or our supporters, are coming from rural areas, townships. Those are people that they are regarded as uneducated, and most of them are unemployed. So these are the people that we are mobilizing. You know that most political parties are using these people as voting tools, but as Born to Win, we are saying all these individuals were born to win. Whether they went to school without school shoes, they were mocked by their communities, their parents were accused of witchcraft before. We are saying you guys were born to win. Most of them now, between 40% and 60% of them, we are going to fill them as ward councillors and mayoral candidates. All these people who have been in government since 1994 must go home now. We're going to enlist all the unemployed people as ward councillors and mayoral candidates. Even the uneducated, we will train them as time goes on. Some of us went to parliament without even having a post-matric qualification. But when I left there, with a diploma in law. Yeah. So yeah, we can see that some of these things are possible at Tulasizu.
Yeah, I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me ask the same question of Sydney Baloyi. Sydney, as I'm listening to Boy Mamabolo, it sounds like they are seeking to be campaigning to represent the voice of the disenfranchised in our society, the voice that is not heard as much as the other voices, the elites, in the words that he uses. I imagine that you are also carrying the same message. Why is your voice, Afrika Mayibuye, a voice that deserves to play in that space where we already have some 480 political parties?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thanks for your kind welcome to Lasizwe, and thanks to your audience as well. So we have not specifically isolated a specific grouping of people in South Africa as the ones that we wish to speak on behalf of. We exist for a very simple reason. South Africans that we have spoken to in the past 3 months have asked Mayibuye to exist. Unlike most parties that start with a little meeting in a boardroom, we chose not to begin with rallies or manifestos, but with consultation. There's a lot of power in consulting people. You have been a member of the Fourth Estate for many years, Thulasizwe, and you have traveled the country in probably the same manner that we have just done in the past 3 months. So in your own way, you did a lot of consultation because of the type of work that you do, although you did not do those consultations with a view of opening any political formation.
Yeah.
But you will agree with me that communities that you've met have raised the same demands. They want water that runs, schools that help children succeed, jobs that are sustainable, and most importantly, leaders who can be trusted.
Yeah. All right. I want to give, I have a caller from Springs, Jonathan. But before I get to Jonathan, I want to give Professor Setulego Matebesi the opening salvo from his side. Prof, from what you are hearing, 480 political parties, each one cutting out and carving out a segment of the population whose voice they believe they can represent better than the voices that are already in existence. How do you see this? Is this strengthening of democracy, the widening of the political marketplace, or is it further fracturing of the vote with the result that, the voices that are there, none of them really will be strong enough and formidable enough to pose a serious challenge for power?
Hi, good afternoon to Thulasizwe and my fellow panelists. South Africans. It's a very difficult question to respond to, but if you look at, and I'm going to start at a minute level, community, grassroots level, community leadership or attaining the status of leadership involves high transaction cost that you need to be able to engage with your community members. You need to have resources to be able to sustain the means to engage. And once you attain the position of a leader, that translates into power. And I don't think anybody who doesn't believe that he or she has power will start to initiate or even try to launch a political party. And I think that's where our problem is. In South Africa, we still need a template. We still need history to demonstrate to us what new roles do all these new political parties play. Yes, and I do agree. My point of departure is when South Africans from any corner of this country engage in any democratic means, and that also involves informing political party. There's nothing wrong with that. But we should not be naive. We have seen all these parties emerging, and I strongly just believe that it leads to the further fragmentation of the political space. They're not adding anything new, and it has become a vicious cycle of parties emerging 6 months before any elections, and then only to dissipate into thin air afterwards. And hopefully this is not a case with these new formations.
All right. I've given each one of you your opening comments. Let me go to one of our viewers who's watching and calling in. Jonathan in Springs, good afternoon. Please make your point. Right? We seem to have lost. When you hear that tone, it's never a good thing when you hear that tone. Masego Shivambu, let me pick it up with you. Let's talk about the infrastructure that is required and the levels and threshold for a political party to be able to contest. These new political parties and also issues of compliance as well, because that was an issue not so long ago, right? In terms of political parties that were not compliant in terms of their reporting and submissions, etc. How much of a challenge does that pose for you as the IEC, the management of 480 and growing political parties from a perspective of infrastructure required, declarations that are needed, reporting and the likes?
Look, we have a very liberal scheme for registering of political parties. A party that needs to register nationally must have a constitution, a deed of foundation, and demonstrable support of at least 1,000 registered voters, and they must have the signatures of those voters. They pay an inconsequential administration fee, and if their constitution does not propagate any discrimination on the constitutional impermissible grounds, that party will be registered. We do not have any qualms in administering the parties. We do not have any qualms with the number of parties that are registered, because we believe as an election management body, it is not up to us to determine who voters should choose. But in all this discussion, we must not lose sight that the more the number of political parties, the more difficult it is for a voter to find a party or candidate of their choice on an ever-increasing length of ballot paper to vote with, to select with confidence and vote with confidence, because it is possible that people with low literacy and less than ideal voting condition, people may miscast their ballot, i.e. vote for party X when they intended to vote for party Y because of the length of the ballot and maybe in some instances similarity in the resemblance of party names and party identifiers. So for our interest is the interest of the voter, not to be deceived in voting for a party they did not intend to vote for, but being able again to use the ballot paper as the only tool available to a voter to make a choice and for us to translate that choice into representation in a legislative assembly.
Boy Mamabolo, from your side, I've been picking up in much of the commentary since you announced Born to Win. Initially, you had intended to register it as Mandela for president. What happened there? Let me ask you that before I ask you my substantive question. What happened to Mandela for president, and now we have Born to Win?
Yeah, but remember, the people of the ANC, when I was intending to leave, they said, no, boy, even if he leaves, he will leave alone. He won't be followed by anyone. So when they realized that we got more than 10,000 signatures, they said, hey, man, this guy is serious. And then they then objected the name. They even mobilized Mandela, what do you call him, Nelson Mandela Foundation, to object to the name, to say, no, this guy can't use the name of our hero without consulting us. It's fine. I mean, because we don't want to go up and down with the IEC. I told my comrades to say, comrades, we rather abandon this name and also withdraw our appeal, because remember we wrote an appeal to the IEC, but we said no, we're going to withdraw the appeal. We come up with a new name, we change the colors, and then we go and get fresh signatures from our people. Yeah, I know they require only 1,000, but our aim now is to get 1 million. Hence, we're not rushing the process. We will be submitting sometime around November. For the next 3 months, we will be going to the ground, talking to people, getting more signatures. We want to break a record of submitting 1 million signatures.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, at the time at which the papers were circulating when you were trying to register as Mandela for president, there was a bit of an issue about whether or not Mandela is part of your names. Do you have a name, second, third name that is Mandela?
But remember when I joined COSAS in 1996, if you ask my high school peers or my fellow comrades, they refer to me as Mandela. You have your Soviet Lekhanyano, you have your chair, Mama, all these are our revolutionary names. So we're just formalizing them to say, no, we know this person as a Mandela, as our liberator. As they were saying Mandela for president, they were saying, comrade boy, you are our Mandela now. You're going to liberate us in 2029.
Yeah. Sidney Baloyi, just from the processes you've undertaken leading up to you forming Afrika Mayibuye, what was the, the point and the moment at which you realized that there is a need for a new political party? Many parties start out in that way. The EFF started out in that way, saying we are consulting on the question of what is to be done. And yours was to say, if the people of South Africa say there's no need for another political party, what swung it for you in these consultations that made you believe that overwhelmingly or decisively the voice of the people says we should go ahead and form a new political party?
Thank you very much for that question, Thulasizwe. So you've just said that many parties have started the same way as we did, but definitely not at the scale that we have just done. We made it a point that the consultation process that we undertook should literally visit all the 9 provinces of our beautiful country. And that's exactly what we delivered. We did not go into this process with a predetermined outcome in mind. We were completely open-minded about it. We did not go there to tell people what to do. We literally went there to ask them what must be done. And that's what leadership is all about. That's what leadership means. It means facing the country as it is, broken in some places, resilient in others, and asking those who are on the receiving end of the challenges that the people shared with us. It's what you need because it guides you in getting your end game right. So by the time we had crossed 5 provinces, and the mandate was consistently the same, that they would like to see us constitute a formal political party or movement. At that stage, it was becoming increasingly apparent. Even the rumors in your circles were beginning to predict that in the end, there will be a political movement because that's what the people were asking.
All right. Let me take a call from Vincent in Guyana very quickly. Vincent, good afternoon. Shoot straight, please.
Afternoon, Tulas. I think my point is first and foremost is to really welcome the new party that is, Mayuya is a good, I think, party coming to us. But then again, the comment I would like to say is to say, I think South Africa should look at categorizing the voting system, where you've got Progressive Party, Conservative Party, and Democratic Party. And all other parties that believe in either conservative or progressive or democracy should align themselves with that. Then we've got 3 voting systems at least, and not the whole lot of 400, 500. The confusion is coming in. And if we get that kind of categorization, perhaps we would trim it down to something that looks like what US have today. So that's my comment, so that we can go somewhere.
Thank you for that, Vincent. Let me take that and throw it at you then, Prof. Matebesi. Masego Shiburi alluding to the threshold and the requirements to register a political party, the deposit, he said it's inconsequential, 1,000 signatures of voters and the likes. Is that a problem? Should we be looking at tightening that and saying the threshold should be higher for you to register a new political party, or should we continue?
You know, because what we should perhaps ask is, what are you trying to do if you want to increase the threshold? Are you now trying to close the door, or shut down the door on those who are trying to also launch political parties? But I've heard what the both speakers said, who are now also on the verge of or have already formed new parties. And perhaps what I'm going to say is not directed to them, but assessment of the situation is it's very difficult, even if you can now get 10 million votes. We've just concluded the, students' SRC elections at the University of the Free State. And I know you can't even want to start to compare that, but having the numbers in terms of those that will nominate or stand behind the party will not necessarily translate into, actual votes. And that is the first challenge. And I also hear about the consultation. South Africans, we open our doors. It's a Saturday afternoon. If we do have visitors, we will provide a sympathetic year. But South Africans, as I've indicated, are not yet convinced that all these new parties will bring in new. And another point that I would do, you should just go and look at MK Party, the draw
Prof, sorry, apologies.
And you have to ask yourself,
apologies for that,
parties have that appeal?
Yeah, apologies for that. The line started cracking up quite badly, and we were battling to hear you towards the end there, but I think we got enough out of that point. That's political analyst, Professor Situlego Matebesi. We were also joined by Masego Shiburi, IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, as well as Boy Mamabolo, the leader of the newly formed Born to Win Party, as well as Sydney Baloyi, spokesperson of the newly formed Afrika Mayibuye Movement, which is all about, we were talking about the proliferation of new political parties.